So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today for this Belbin webinar, where we will be talking about developing team skills to enhance university group work and student employability. We are really delighted today to be joined by two experts, not just experts really, in the whole field, by Jennifer and Denise. So thank you so much for joining us today. And they're going to be talking us through all of their experiences and the research that they have done at the University of Liverpool Management School. So delighted that they are here to join us today. Before we get started, because my goodness, there's so much that we need to tell people. I'm really excited about this, really excited. What I thought we would do is, first of all, we're going to share our team roles with you, because I think for those of you who know about Belbin and who are familiar with the Belbin framework, this may be of interest. So I don't know, oh, Jennifer, you're already out of the way, fantastic. So we've put our top 3 team roles, Belbin team roles, up on the flip chart. It's going to be difficult for you to see, so I'm going to describe it to you. There's one, Denise, they're a specialist, also with plant and also with shaper. And we have Jennifer, who also has shaper and resource investigator and plant. And then you have myself, so with shaper and resource investigator and coordinator. So we have a lot of some of the team roles. We don't have all 9 by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't think completed finishes on any of our radars. So what I'd love for those of you who understand a bit about Belbin, you understand how to predict performance, because what Belbin can look at is the way you can predict when people will work together, is how do you think this afternoon, this next 45 minutes to an hour of 3 high shapers is actually going to work? I'll be interested. So anybody who would like to contribute into the webinar chat about the prediction of the way, before you know anything else about us, before you know anything about our names, our job roles or anything else, how do you think that we are going to work together? Anybody dare say anything? Actually, I think we might have spread it. Everybody's saying, I dare mention this. I dare say anything. Lots of initiative. Yes, I think that would be fair. Energy and lots of ideas, Duncan. There will. I have to say, we've been sitting in this room now since 11 o'clock, and there's been so many ideas and so much energy. It's been phenomenal, actually. So yes, lots of that. Thank you, Campbell. Fast paced, lots of chat, lots of ideas. And that's exactly how it's going to be, really, isn't it? However, what we do know is actually it's not about always playing your strengths all of the time. It's playing the roles in which need to be played to get the most out of the situation, the most out of the relationships. So I have promised to take off my shaper hat and my resource investigator hat, and I am going to try and channel my coordinator, which is my 3rd preferred role, but it's backed up by others, my 3rd strength. And I'm going to see if I can play that, because otherwise I think there'll be a bit too much energy and a bit too much talking. Okay, so what we are going to do, however, if things do get a bit too talkative, I'm going to use a word. I'm not going to say the word shaper, and that means we've got to stop and move on. Okay.
Right.
Okay, fantastic.
That's the rules.
So enough from me. I would love it if Denise and Jennifer, you could introduce yourselves, because the number of letters, qualifications, research studies and everything is just phenomenal, and I missed something out. So please, over to you.
Thanks, Jo. So I am Denise Preece. I'm a doctor at the University of Liverpool Management School. I'm associate professor there. My doctorate is in high-performing teams, and I have studied across the UK looking at the highest performing, highest potential teams within the NHS. I'm extremely passionate about the NHS, and my frustration about the narrative, about concern around health really was the driver for me to do my doctorate, because I was a non-exec, one of the youngest in the UK, and what I was seeing was excellence in abundance, and I just wanted to change the narrative. So that's where I started. So lots of initials. I've got I'm a fellow of the CIPD. I'm an academic fellow of the CIPD. Sorry, I'm a senior fellow of the HEA, Higher Education Authority. and a number of other things. I lead on disabilities for our academics, the management school as well. So I'm very, very passionate about inclusion and divergence and difference.
Wonderful, thank you. Jennifer.
Yes, so I'm also an associate professor at the University of Liverpool, senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and I hold a PhD in cross-cultural learning transition. So my research was looking at how Chinese students and exploring how they experienced UK education when they were here for a master's programme for a year. And I'm very interested in the whole idea of Belbin Team Roles and how we can really understand ourselves and understand others and work far more effectively than perhaps we always do in teams. So by understanding self, understanding other, how we can then transport that into very much more successful organisations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I would just like to say it was fascinating this morning. Denise and Jennifer came down last night. Well, no, not last night, yesterday. Had lunch with Meredith Belbin and then came to the office this morning. And before I could even say hello, they were straight back at the conversation from where it finished yesterday. I didn't have a chance to make a cup of tea or anything. The passion, I think, for teamwork and understanding each other's strengths, how to use them, it was phenomenal. I felt quite excluded actually. But that's okay. So what I really need to talk about is your Beacon project, isn't it? The Beacon project. I'm just going to share screen. And I'm just going to click here, and then I'm going to click here. There we go. So developing team skills to enhance university group work and student employability. Where do you want to start here? I suppose it's the big picture, don't we? Why is it that both of you were interested in this? What was your inspiration? What were you inspired by? Where did your energy come from to look at this particular project, which is helping student employability?
So if you could just pop onto the next slide. Jen and I worked together on one of the modules we have at the University of Liverpool Management School. And it is an award-winning module, so we were nominated and won the award. And we use these 4 pillars to be able to bring about a transformation in young people to get them employed, and that's what the award said. And we all of across those 4 pillars, quite often we have used Belbin as one of the underpinning founding questions, challenges, frameworks. So first of all, we were looking at how we inspire our young people. What is it that we're doing to actually get them to aspire to the best they can be? And we use Belbin, and that's the relationship we have with you, in exploring actually what are you brilliant at, and Jen will follow up on the brilliance in a minute for you. And then we also think about, if based on your role, your strengths, your challenges, how are you connecting? How are you getting yourself out there? Who are you connected to? How can you get employment? How do you, if you like, channel your journey to get to the best place for you? And that comes back to, we are in an educational establishment, you know, we're delivering degrees for these people, but it's not just educating them, it's knowledge able. How do you apply what you know into practice to demonstrate, for example, in an interview, you are the best person? How do we know that you haven't just got a qualification, you've actually got something to contribute, to give? So we really explore with our young people before they go into industry, what is the best self? What are they loving? What are they doing that makes them shine? How can we then access, and this comes to actionable, how can we access the workplace so we get them to think about their best selves in their best job, in the best place to work? And that is where we've got to with our if you like, this award, but also what we're doing with now hundreds of people going through the management school.
Yeah, and it's important to say that that was a faculty award that we won in learning and teaching, and also that we've just written a paper that's in final review now, so hopefully we'll be able to be published soon and you'll be able to read more about it in that as well.
So the imagery that you're seeing there is something that Jen and I put together, and the very top corner is around someone sat back looking across the lake and seeing this vista. And what we're basically saying is, do you know, some people when they're looking across the lake will see a hotel, some will see a house, some will see swans, someone will see a forest. every one of you will see something different, and you are all very diverse, very different. You all want different things. And we take people through this concept of, you're in the forest right now. Sometimes you literally can't see the wood for the trees. So we use Belbin and other tools for them to stand back and literally see what is the wood. You know, the duckling is, you're paddling like mad underneath, but you want to grow into that space. We've given them the boots there. You know, we're on a hike. It's a journey. We're not there yet. We've got your rucksack, everything packed in there. But if you look at that middle picture, everybody is on that journey at a different place. They're not necessarily all going to the same place, and they're all going at different speeds as well. So it's letting everybody, you know, follow the journey. But remember, that bottom boots is, we're all in this together. We are a team. We're there to support you. We want you to be the butterfly. We want you to evolve. But you are in the shadow of others. You know, we are there to support you. We're there to guide you. And then that headspace is, to do that, we need to start opening people's minds into what are they fantastic at, but also what is it that they don't know about themselves, what do they need to enhance about themselves, where do they want to not work because it's not their strength. So we do that whole listing and a diary, that's that bottom corner there, is about actually making sense of it. Let's analyze it, let's put it into some systemic way that it produces the best you at the end of it.
And I think what we've done is interesting in that we've looked at embedding this within a module. So we are academics and we're working in an academic environment, but we're not giving this to the career service to do for us. We're embedding this into a module. And that's where I know we've made a tremendous difference to many, many students by doing this, taking this approach.
Can you just get the passion that's coming through? It's phenomenal. Okay, so let's start talking about the teamwork.
Yeah, well, it's very important. I've given you some references there, but as you've heard, Denise has done a whole doctorate on teamwork, so she's got much more of an academic understanding and background than I have, I would say, on high performing teams. But we've looked at the ideas that for academic performance and future employability, which every university needs and wants for their students, surely, we all want very strong graduate outcomes for our students. But teamwork is a key skill. That was Wilson et al. 2018. Ainsworth 21 talks about the way that we need to look at accountability and satisfaction. So again, every university seeks to have very high degree of satisfaction from their students. And also, I think, particularly in the last couple of difficult years that we've had, making students accountable and bringing in this sense of accountability, working together in a team. Any of us that have done this will know how challenging it is to work with people. Wouldn't life be simple, Jo, if everyone was like me or everyone was like you? Wouldn't life be simple? In some ways it would. In other ways we get very little. We get some things done exceptionally well and other things not done at all, it must be said. But there's a real sense there of learning how to work in a team. It doesn't automatically happen. And we've got to, you've looked at that idea of Rose and I thinking about working effectively, may lead to higher academic grades. And certainly that's our experience from what we've looked at and how we've taught our students. And this, when we take people from being a student and transition them into work, this idea of you will have to work in an organizational team. It's impossible to work alone in most situations. We have to understand how to focus on complexity of problems and then co-work together. And that's a real skill. And sometimes in an academic environment, if I dare to say, we don't always teach it as well as we might. And I think, and we think, very important that we teach teamwork to prepare people for this world of work they'll be facing.
So not just an abstract concept, not just something that is added on to what they're already doing, something which is
intrinsic. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, you know, going back to the bottom point there, we've talked about complex problems in an academic setting. We're often giving them very complex problems. And unless we're giving them the skills to be able to work together and explore them appropriately and share that responsibility, then what we're actually asking them to do is potentially fail. So
you're setting people up to fail unless they understand the concept of working together.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which isn't just for this university setting, but it's when they
and to be honest, you know, if they're going to learn and they're going to learn from failure, they need to be doing it ideally in the academic setting, where we can pick them up and met together, support them and move them on, and not let that first failure happen in the workplace. So we need to do it very early on.
allow them to fail as many times as they need to.
And need to.
Because
yeah.
you need to fail, don't you?
You do.
Otherwise you're not going to grow.
And that's where we, you know, I know from high performance teams in the NHS, the very best teams are those that fail together and learn together and story tell and use that to grow as a really sound footing. So we need to let them do that and not be fearful or frightened.
Okay, so we've set the scene. We understand why for your awards that you've been winning for student employability, etc. You then put together this beacon project for the University of Liverpool Management School. It was grounded in theory, but with a real practical outcome. You're setting these students up for life, giving them the skills that they can, but like I said, not in an abstract way, in a real, it's intrinsic to what they are doing. So what is it that you actually, what were your aims, what were your objectives, what was the research aim for this particular piece of work? Yeah.
Well, we were looking at helping students to understand their own teamwork behaviours and those of others in order to enhance university group work, assessed and non-assessed, and employability skills. So we're really thinking, how can our students understand themselves and their behaviours, and indeed those of others, in order to perform that much better in that team context, with a view ultimately to being that much more able to enhance their employability, which is all about graduate outcomes, and every university in the land and beyond wants to have high employability for the students. And all too often this kind of work is sitting outside of the academic system. It's sitting with the career service and almost deemed to be distinct. And our view, and certainly the work that we've done right the way through, has been that the more that we can enable our students to understand themselves within their academic discipline, the better it is. And indeed, that's the paper that we've written. Yeah. So the research objectives are there quite clearly set out for people to see, to inspiring our students, to educate them, to connect as well, linked to employability, greater sense of understanding, and definitely diversity at the core of this, of self and other.
And you've already got a very strong track record, that's the expression, isn't it? In employability, haven't you, at the university? The university, you've already had quite a few pioneering programmes, especially over the COVID years, you were telling me. This is something that's been a real focus.
Yeah, and that's links back to the faculty awards. So in the middle of COVID, everybody's online. Jen and I are working really hard with our final years to get them into employability. And we happen to manage to get 90% of our students into employability. Remember, they're all sat at home. They're all keyboard warriors. None of them are out there. None of them have been in business. They're not doing the regular year in industry. And we got this 90% employability. And the others were going on to study a master's or going into something else that they've chosen, because we'd really help them refine what is your best self, how do you apply that, where does it need to go. So this is the if you like, the success, building on that success of that employability, is picking up the component parts of how we got there, how we achieved employability.
And just for those, because I'm not from an academic environment, I realise I'm probably going on that PhD here, but that's fine. I'm not sure why
give you time, Jo, give you time.
When we talk about employability, what are we saying? We're not just saying getting a job, are we?
No.
That's the easy part in a sense. Well, no, getting the right role. We're really looking at the right role at the right time for those individual students, that they understand themselves so much that they then begin to understand, where am I talk about areas of brilliance. Where are you brilliant? And invariably when I ask students of that, at first most are quite unsure. They don't know where their brilliance lies. And the beauty, I think, about having used Belbin Team Roles is that I'm able to say I'm a brilliant shaper. I know I'm a brilliant shaper, but I'm also able to say, and I will say this to my students, I'm absolutely useless at detail. That completer finisher, that dotting and crossing, completing the paper that we're doing, and the detail of that is really, really, really hard work. And I think by us being honest, and we are honest with our students about our areas of brilliance and our areas of challenge, which won't come naturally. And I will often say, you'll find probably the odd mistake on my slides. I find it really, really hard to create perfection. I just do. And that's who I am. And by us being able to be discerning about ourselves and talk about ourselves in that way, I think is empowering for students, because then they're able to be honest about, and it's being honest. And we've talked before about perhaps societally and maybe, you know, even internationally, we expect too much of our one leader. Often we look to one leader to be the answer. And I've yet to meet a perfect leader. I don't know if you've met them, Jo. Obviously, Jo, I've met you obviously a number of times, Jo. Well, obviously apart from Jo, but yeah.
They don't exist, do they? They just
Yeah.
not exist.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had your research aims and objectives, and this is all about employability skills, but the objectives there, and you used Belbin as one of the tools as part of this study that you carried out. And for those of you who aren't so familiar with Belbin, I just thought we'd put, you know, what is Belbin? Well, that is Dr. Belbin. Yesterday, this is a fresh off the press photo in his garden yesterday with Denise and Jennifer. But Belbin is language. It's a way in which we can describe the behavioural contributions that we make in the workplace by working with other people. So there are 9 distinct clusters of behaviour, 9 distinct clusters of behaviour that are needed for a team to be successful. It doesn't mean that they're all needed at the same time. It doesn't mean that one's more needed than others. They're not, they're all equally needed at various times when working with a team. And this is where this language of Belbin comes in, doesn't it, which you use very much as part of this piece of research. So that is what a Belbin team role is. Lovely photo.
Beautiful garden. Yeah, nice to have that.
Very lovely. Okay, so on to the study in a bit more detail. For those with implementer tendencies, we're now going to go through the structure and how everything actually happened. Yeah.
So we created a pre-training questionnaire, which was looking at themselves. Obviously, we've got access to all of that, but looking at themselves and analysing self before doing anything in relation to team roles. Thereafterwards, they all individually did their Belbin into place individual reports. So they had 4 observers each to enable them to get their 360-degree feedback. And this is pre-training. Now, the cohort of students were final years and also MSc, mainly HRM, human resource management, or occupational psychology. So they're pretty seasoned students and the kind of students we'd expect to have a very strong understanding of self. So that was interesting for them to get their 4 observers. Then we were very privileged to host Jo Keeler to come across to join us for half a day training with these students. And they were given their actual reports just the night before. So it was minimal time for them to digest and to consider them. But they came to the training with those reports in situ completed. And then after the training, they completed a post-training questionnaire, and then we analysed the data using SPSS. And then Vivo, we had both quantitative and qualitative data accordingly.
Thank you very much. I'm just holding the study here. I'm talking about 50-odd pages. It would be amiss of me not at this point to thank both Hannah Gilchrist and Maddie Dembow, who really did help form the study, didn't they? They were wonderful at putting all the data together, the questionnaires together, and to really help make it.
They are fabulous, and yeah, they both know we're doing this today, and they'll be watching it afterwards if they're not able to at the moment. But in a sense, that for them was career enhancement, because they've moved on to both brilliant careers, both of them already, which is wonderful. But no, they were fantastic in this monitor, evaluator, completer, finisher areas that we did need assistance with in the study, and they're to be commended in their input throughout. Yes.
So we'll talk a little bit more about the session and the reports shortly, so I'm sure that's going to come up in some of the other questions that we have. So we had these students, they completed the questionnaire, we had that data, they all had their Belbin reports with 4 observers. For those of you who don't know what Belbin is, you fill in a questionnaire called the self-perception inventory, and by doing that you find out where you have preferences for each of these 9 team roles, because we all have a little bit of all of it actually. And you find out what you prefer. But of course, because Belbin is measuring behaviour, it's measuring what you do, not who you are. It's a really good idea to get feedback from others. It's like the validity check. I may say I'm a really fabulous plant, but unless anybody else sees those ideas, perhaps I'm not. So that's where that feedback comes in, to really validate the self, say, are those strengths really being seen? So you had the training, that was a wonderful half day up in Liverpool. Then we had the post-training questionnaire and then the analysis. Let's look at some results.
Yep. It's as we'd wish, really, isn't it, Jo? We couldn't have wished for better results, to be honest, from these reflections. Their reports show very positive changes indeed. And we need to remember that these are social science near graduates or near postgraduates. They're towards the end of their studies. These are the people, the kinds of people who you would hope to have a higher sense of perhaps self-understanding than perhaps other disciplines, dare I say. But nonetheless, the results were, I'm genuinely very happy and very pleasantly surprised with what came out at the end. I know you were, Jo, when you received them. Things like the enhancement of those employability skills. So the journey that Denise and I have been on, teaching our students about increasing and enhancing their employability, I think was absolutely came out here. That understanding, the increased self-awareness and the self-affirmation, increasing of confidence, heightened awareness of team roles and how to work in a high-performing team. I mean, my goodness, this is a relatively small intervention, really. You think what we could do if we went, as we are going to hopefully do, further still with this. But from this study, already the results are speaking for themselves.
And for those of you who have specialist knowledge of evaluated tendencies, so when they're talking a good one, but what do the numbers say?
Well,
There we go.
Right, so as I've said, we've got some high mean scores pre-questionnaire, pre-workshop questionnaire, so that validates what I was saying beforehand. But if you notice there, one of the key things that stands out for me, promote myself an interview, was really quite low, 3.3 out of 5, given that most of them were really at this point in their academic year attending interviews or about to attend interviews. That should be far higher, in my opinion. 3.3 out of 5 is not good enough at this point in time with our students, and I'm wanting this certainly to be higher still. And what we see at the end there, that at the bottom there, enhancing employability, after the training and the self-perception industry index, they've had a chance to read through those. We've got a 4.77, so that's increased. I'm very happy with that, actually. I'd like 5, but fantastic. And yet we have got a 5, have we not, Jo? There, look at that. The effective group work afterwards, straight 5. And that's asking the Belbin works after the Belbin work. How are my useful skills? How can I work effectively in a team? Very much 5 out of 5 with no standard deviation, which is quite incredible. So that's saying from that intervention, we have started the training and these students believe that they were ready now for group work in a way that they were really not before. So the key issue beforehand was that they found group work hard. And I would say, we know this, moving from group to team needs to be taught. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what's the student feedback? We'll be going through a few of the exercises and we've actually on workshop shortly, but the feedback, not the numbers, but from actual students themselves. Again, it was all incredibly positive, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a beautiful experience and will be an unforgettable one due to the exercises. And we thank Jo for those exercises because Jo brought them to life. As we know, we can sit with the Belbin Team Role, but we do need some qualification understanding to accompany with that. So I'm aware of my strengths. I'll use them to my advantage. Going forwards, I'll work to understand my upcoming teams, ensuring that everyone is in the role that most closely matches their skill set. Fantastic. I have reinforced my perception of where I sit in the team, but also better understand why my contribution is valuable. There's some really, really good examples there of what students said. And I think the big thing as well is this an understanding not just of brilliance, but also of weaknesses and how better to negate my weaknesses. So wonderful feedback that we had. Yeah.
I'm just going to stop sharing it because I think let me just move that a little bit here. It's a bit muffled. I do apologise for trying to share the microphone. Is that I know at right at the very beginning of the session, we're all sitting in the room and you have the hands up of who enjoys working with other people. And there wasn't that much of a uptake. There was a bit of a, I feel I ought to put my hand up because I'm in a session at the moment. But then by the end of it, I think it was that appreciating of difference and understanding that everybody had a different contribution, but also feeling really strong in themselves. Is that self-awareness that for me, you saw those light bulb moments coming up very much so. some of the exercises we did, one of them we just, for those of you who are Belbin accredited, you'll know this one, we just did the round the room. So everybody has their Belbin individual report. They know their strengths and their weaknesses. And you stand by your top team role, and you're physically getting up and you're standing around the room. Well, of course, everybody stands in a slightly different place, and perhaps they, you know, their colleagues. And then you ask them to stand by their second, and then their last. And we start having this lovely communication and discussion about difference. That every single one of those behaviours is needed, but we're all bringing different behavioural strengths to, you know, to what we're doing. And I think that made people just raise their heads a little bit, didn't it? And then we had some other exercises, but another one we did brand me. And again, I think they found that quite useful. So with their Belbin report and what they'd learned about each other's and team, there's a whole case of really understanding, how can I use this information to promote myself at interview? How can I talk about my strengths without getting all embarrassed? How can I promote my strengths, which are real strengths that I have, not the person next to me, but which I have? And how can I talk about my weaknesses in a way that isn't positive?
And Jo, I think when you are working with young people, you have to remember some of them are quite vulnerable. They outwardly are doing the swan, I'm fine, I'm doing this, I'm getting great qualification, you know, great. And some of them aren't. And when we're trying to get them to prepare and almost envision themselves in an interview, these golden nuggets, these titles, this language, it gives them so much permission to go into an interview and say, well, I'm great at this, and it's evidence-based, and so does someone else think I'm great at this as well.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
Evidence-based and permission to say, I'm doing really well. And that, I think, is getting over that hurdle of, what do I say in an interview? If they ask me, what am I really, you know, week out, what's my challenges? They've actually got something really interesting and positive to say, and a contribution to the conversation to say, but that's okay, because, you know, we're all different, we all need to be different. And it gives them that maturity. What do you think, Jen, in an interview situation? Because we get them to refine their LinkedIn profile, we get them to do a tailored CV. All of this feeds into that brilliance that you talk to them about.
Yeah, and that is a key question I give to students right at the beginning of our module when we're working on this together. I'll be saying, well, where are you brilliant? What is your brilliance? And the challenge, I was saying before, the difficulty of doing it doesn't come naturally. I think there's perhaps a cultural angle to this as well, but certainly from an English perspective, we're not very good at saying where we're brilliant, and we're not used to using even that language. But to recognise that there are areas of our own expertise that we can be absolutely fantastic at, but also that we're not this perfect being, I think is a huge relief to them, to be honest. I really do. And we love this language. We love the idea of allowable weaknesses. And we think it should be taken to everywhere within organisations and governments, politics, the whole thing, so that whoever those people are, they're able to say, yes, I am a leader and I am brilliant in these areas. However, I need support in other areas where I'm not so strong. It's really important to be able to do this.
Powerful stuff.
Very powerful.
Powerful stuff. We're now about to answer a couple of those questions with the next slide. So I'm just going to share screen again. Click here, click there. I've got two screens. I've never had two screens before. I'm looking a little bit confused. Okay, so just go on to the next one. So what are those next steps?
Well, this is when we come to power, isn't it? And who makes these decisions? If we were in power, or we were in control, we'd be introducing Belbin to all our first years in the management school as a matter of course, starting them off learning and discovering at a very baseline level, if you like. And within the second year, we'd be wanting them to do their own reports and to get an idea of understanding self and starting with self. I think that's probably enough in year 2. But by the time of year 3, probably beginning of year 3, I'd say, really begin these observer reports. So it's not about just our own self-perception, their own self-perception, what their friends, colleagues they've worked with together in a university setting have really helped them to understand self. So I think I see it on a staged step like that, but I'm not in complete control, Jo, unfortunately.
Which is a surprise.
Well, absolutely. I'm a shaper, don't they know?
And so have you left it open to be able to repeat any of the work that you've done to repeat the study? Is there any chance of doing that just to validate?
We can definitely
Yeah.
go forward with that, but we want to enhance it still further. And I know we're speaking with your Director of Research tomorrow to talk about the next steps that we might take to work with you on really enhancing and improving what we've done in terms of extending it, you think, as well?
Yeah. I think for me, you know, when we look at the highest performing teams, one of the things that shines is the self-insight. They really, so they don't just reflect, they reflect, so they've reflected on what it is their strength, where do they not have strengths. They don't expect to have strengths across everything, but they do reflect on, because we talk about allowable weaknesses, but we also recognize that some of them do need to grow as well. They need to strengthen, they need to move forward. And this, I think, this is the whole, if you put it across a longer timeline, this 2-3 year timeline, it gives them much more opportunity to not just reflect, but reflects and change and adapt and grow. So by the time they leave us, these are well-rounded, knowledge able, so they can apply what they know into practice, into discussions, and that's when it links right back to they're getting really good jobs, and by really good jobs I mean jobs that are so aligned to them, their skills, their beliefs, their behaviours, with employers that also align to their skills, beliefs and behaviours, and will respect them. And so it becomes a really mutual symbiotic relationship. It's a healthy, growing relationship. And that's what we want. We want these resilient young people.
And then how are you at your best? That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was thinking, but I did some work with the Welsh Assembly, I did government, and I talked to quite a large grouping. We had the BBC Wales doing all the backstage support. And that was one of the best talks I've ever given, because I had absolutely 100% confidence. I was totally supported, as I am to do it today, ably by Jo with her IT skills. But no, to make sure everything was all done completely. And I used clips of interviews I've done with Meredith Belbin himself. And I was able to say, please put them in at these points in time between the PowerPoint slides. So I could be brilliant, because the technical expertise, what Goffman talks about backstage, was absolutely brilliant as well. And I think that symbiotic relationship, that interface between the two is really important. But the accolade shouldn't then just go to the speaker. So if we think about theatre and the sort of idea of the stage, it's not the key performer who's seen, who is ultimately responsible for that performance. It's every single person who's made that possible. I'm absolutely keen advocate to make sure that everyone gets their due thanks and reward and praise.
Sorry.
Yes.
Got distracted by questions.
Surely not. You're my coordinator. I'm expecting you to hop in. Let me shake my coordinator.
Somebody's actually with the Q&A, Derek Fox, who worked with before, and it's that moving from group to team that you were talking about, isn't it? Which is so important here, and that's real crux of this employability piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's one of the areas, Jo, we know in academia, students really struggle because they feel like they're grouped, and quite often not even choosing a group.
Yes.
And they don't feel like they're a team, so they don't like, they call it teamwork, but what they don't like is group work. They like teamwork. They understand teamwork better. But group work is a struggle. It is a struggle because we're not doing enough
to teach them to teams,
to transition from a group to team.
And they're the skills that they need for when they get their dream jobs that make them
Jo, you know, 94% of people report as belonging to a team. So if it's that prevalent, it's almost every one of us in our organisations. We need to understand team much better because it's our structure, it's our everyday.
I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, teams are very much, the word is bandied around and people don't really know what it means. They don't understand the part that they need to play to make that team successful. And it's not just about a few people all sitting in the same space, is it? It's all about the shared objectives, vision, being chosen for what you can contribute. Not just because of your job title or your seniority. There's so much there.
And we need, also in terms of hybrid working at the moment, it's been really difficult. And I still think I think I'm old school. I think we need some face-to-face time together every week as teams in order to become teams. I think it's very hard from what I've seen and done online. It's much harder, I'd say, in a Zoom setting, but there we go.
It's not impossible, it's just harder. I think we just have to be more conscious of behaving and acting as a team.
Mm.
But I agree, sometimes those things are easier when they're face to face. I'm just going to use the word shaper at this point, so we've got other slides to go through. So what we're saying is nobody's perfect, but the team can be, and that's what we're trying to do with students. I'm just going to stop sharing a sec. So in summary, you have a passion for helping students get the best job that they possibly can based on their strengths, based on what makes their heart sing. And that is not an easy proposition because we are also incredibly different. By looking at this particular cohort of students, by introducing the language of Belbin and introducing the fact that we are all different, we've got now this terminology to be able to talk about it, people started to be able to say, yes, okay, after looking at the questionnaires before and after, I now feel more skilled. I feel like I'm more in my toolbox to be able to, one, work effectively as a team with that number 5 for teamwork, and also when promoting myself at interview, they had some of that language. Obviously, we want to repeat that. And the study that has something like, I'm sure it will be published at some point, but it's a real credit to both of you for the work that was carried out at the University of Liverpool Management School. It's a wonderful piece of research to have. But that's not just it, is it?
Well, you know us.
Questions later. I've just got a few more slides I would just like to share with you, because the amount of energy you both have, because I think it comes from passion, doesn't it? And if you're passionate about something, you really you want to get involved. You live
life's easy.
So
it's more.
There's some more next steps, isn't there?
There's lots.
So the first next step is just to get Belbin across the board at
Oh,
the
yes.
management school.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Hope the dean's watching. Yes.
And I think that's important. You've got the metrics there to be able to say this is evidence-based.
Yes.
That's what you're after. Over to you. I'm just going to be quiet now.
So my passions, I will confess, I am neurodiverse, I am dyslexic. Neurodiverse usually has an array, so I am dyslexic, but it usually comes with friends, so I'm a little bit ADHD, a little bit of autism, and I'd like to think a little bit gifted as well. And I have been absolutely passionate about saying we have the language of Belbin, we have the roles of Belbin, and we have the difference, the neurological difference, and understanding how they both interplay, how they both come together. And so, you know, one of the typical ones is specialist. You know, if you look at autism, ADHD, giftedness, that intense focus, that looking down and analysing, pulling apart, getting excellence, suggests that there are neurological differences that play as well. And we need to start recognising these differences in the workplace, because right now, typically, not always, but typically a lot of our processes are designed by neurotypical, because they tend to be the people who go into that type of work. And it's not to say one is better than the other, by the way, Jo. Neurotypical, neurodiverse, we need everybody. Absolutely need everybody. However, I brought the autism ADHD today just because one of the statistics that I find very frightening, 22% of the autism population are employed, the rest are not. 22%.
That's an incredible stat.
In 5, you know. And when you look at the giftedness within that autism ADHD spectrum, why wouldn't you want them there? You know, they are entrepreneurs. So, for example, if you're an entrepreneur, you've almost got 500% more chance of being neurodiverse if you're an entrepreneur. We all want entrepreneurs in our organizations. We all want innovation. We all want change. So therefore, for me, I think we need to sit back and think, actually, when we're going into these teams and we're looking at these different roles, are we really getting the right person into the right role? So I would look at the giftedness and think, actually, if my thing is like a focus, or if it isn't, my area is, I'm not necessarily overly sociable, but we've got a recruitment process, for example, where we're asking them to be overly sociable and or not sociable, because that's your difference, your diversity, then they're not going to get through that interview. They're not going to get in that organisation. Does everybody have to be chatty and communicate really well for an employee coming to the organisation? I would suggest that we need to start questioning some of, if we know that's the role we're recruiting to, then the person with the skills might be quite different. One of the other things that I would say is if you're hyper-focused, specialist hyper-focused, you might be hyper-focused, which tends to be me, 4 o'clock in the morning. I would sort out the world's problems at 4 o'clock in the morning. I could have day's work might even be finished by 12 o'clock that afternoon, 2 o'clock, because one of the things, again, neurodiverse tend to literally their productivity can be 150% more than others. So I could have been absolutely thrown everything at it. However, I might want to, and that's why I put that dyslexia, I might want to be in a quiet space, I might want to be on my own, I might not want to go into the workplace to do that piece of work. So if we are going to 5 presenteeism and culture, that's not suiting the majority of neurodiverse. They might, a day, 2 days, they might not want to come and chat, they might want to, we talk about it, we've discharged our social sort of bin, I'm empty, I need to go and fill up my tank. I need to do that usually somewhere quiet, somewhere where I'm on my own. That usually means I need to be at home. So working practices need to be adapted. I think our interview, going into an interview where we're testing them in a team, in a sterile environment on a workshop for 3 hours, and we're looking at them, is probably not the best space for someone who has a little bit of autism, who really struggles with those very intense social relationships. We're getting the right person at the end of it anyway. So this is my call out there for everybody to start thinking about, have we got our recruitment diverse enough? How we go there? Have we thought about our working practices? Have we got flexibility out there? Are we supporting people with difference? I would say, that there's when people are struggling, because right now we're different. Neurodiversity, if you like, is exactly the same as your fingerprint or your thumbprint. Every single one of us will interpret this world differently, emotionally, intellectually, psychologically. Therefore, are we designing spaces and places to be in education and in the work adaptable enough that we can all fit in?
And that goes on beautifully to the next slide, doesn't it?
This is one of your favourite slides, isn't it?
This is my best one. And Jen and I talk about this a lot. The reality is on the left. The reality right now, we tend to be that very high stack boxes tends to be, we've got a set of recruitment policies and practices that bring in a specific type into our organisation. And Jen, you were talking that typically in some organisations, you might typically, your first job might be someone with this type of skill. It doesn't mean that the whole team needs to look like that, but we are recruiting quite often specifically for a specific type. And therefore you can see the person is never ever going to even get into the interview basket of people who are coming into your organisation. So that's the reality where we are. Equality is for example, we'll do 5% of X, we'll do 10% of Y. That doesn't mean it's the right person, we just got 10% of them. And we need to really, I think, start thinking about, actually, is it equality we want, or actually is it equity? Now, equity starts saying that if we are running a workshop where we're intensively looking at someone's social skills, however, when they come into our organisation, they're going to be doing a technical expert job that doesn't need hardly any social skills, so long as they can communicate well in other ways, that's fine. Then we need to start saying that's workshop, that way of bringing them in needs to change. If we've got 25 forms we need to fill in online and in neurodiverse, and filling forms usually means they time out before you've even finished them, and you have to do them 3 times to even get one done. That's probably not the right way either. So,
and we hear this, didn't we, from our undergraduates? Gosh, if we could get behind these graduate processes of recruitment, it's not always the best way to hire the best graduates, I would say.
So does everybody want a first graduate? I wouldn't say no. Actually, we need some people who dropped out, who never even got the front door. I was discussing, and I will be open with you. I was sitting 10 O levels, and all of my coping mechanisms collapsed I ran my O levels, and I ended up with 3. I went to do my A levels and I ended up dropping out. I've gone on to do an ONC, a HNC, a degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate, all in my own time. I've never had a day where I've gone full time into education. It's all been done. So I found every side door and back door going. Do we want to do that to our young people? I think we do. We want to do. We can give them much better. I think we can put this justice in place and make it fair. Look at difference, and that's where you move into inclusion, and that's where I think, you know, Belbin and inclusion dovetail beautifully, because one is saying these are the jobs, these are the roles we want. It's not saying that we have to have a specific person. It's saying actually divergent difference is nirvana, is where we want to be. So I am extremely passionate.
No, but thank you for sharing. You said it was we don't be, because I think that looking at difference in terms of behaviour when it comes to Belbin, but also the way in which we see things, we process things, the way that we communicate. There must be so many different points of difference, is that they all need to be acknowledged, they all need to be celebrated, and they all need to be utilised.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we are always going down this very narrow, one would say quite traditional path, which is excluding, one could argue, some of the best creative entrepreneurial minds out there, but we're just not allowing them. We're just not allowing them to see over the fence at the moment, are we?
No, we're not. And I like it. I work in metaphors, which is quite typical for a dyslexic. But what we're basically saying, there is only one route you can get to our organisation, and it's on a train, and the track is like this. And my argument is actually you can get on the train, bus, you can go there in the car, you can walk, you can cycle, you can paraglide, exactly. So
and that's our work, that we're doing a lot of work now in the metaphorical space, aren't we, to take some of this work forwards? Absolutely. Yeah. Ooh, the hour's gone too quickly, Jo.
And it goes
Coordinator.
Absolutely nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
We all have different strengths, different weaknesses.
Yeah.
But you put them together, you understand the objectives, and my goodness, magic happens. Magic does.
Look what we have done, the 3 of us.
Look at that. We've got 5 minutes for questions. Before we get on to those questions, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, is I've checked with Denise and Jennifer, you're really happy for people to continue this conversation on LinkedIn.
Love to. Yeah.
So please do find Denise and Jennifer on LinkedIn. We will put their details as well on the email that will.
And we'll take international invites, won't we?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But only if I can carry on.
As long as Jo comes.
Wonderful. So where have we got to? We're really, what is the passion here? The passion is understanding and appreciating difference, and to helping students to understand themselves, the difference of other people, to give them a language to be able to do that, to ensure that they find that job, or you help them to find that role which is going to make their heart sing, which is going to play to their strengths, and which they are going to enjoy going to, not necessarily every day, let's be realistic, but they're going to want to go to because they know that they are making a difference. And your research that was done for the University of Liverpool Management School, in very, the forms we needed to fill in just to get the funding was phenomenal. But to do all of that with such a wonderful team, to be able to say, actually, what we've done is relatively minimal, and look at the difference that's already been made. Look, any of you now in education, you can do this. If any of you have got an interest in your students and their employability chances, there is things that you can do right now at your fingertips that will allow you to replicate the results that we have here. And I'd also say the other thing I'd love everybody to take away really is just that, have a look around you now and have a look in your workplace. Does everybody look like you? Does everybody think like you? Does everybody process information like you? Does everybody visualize like you? Does everybody communicate like you? Because if they do, stop it. There's a world out there of difference, a wonderful, exciting world of diversity, and it's something that we all need to re-embrace, really, for the future. Because I think this is where, just looking sort of in work terms, this is where that competitive advantage is coming in, isn't it? That's where it's coming from. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly now go to the Q&A. We've got a couple of minutes for that. What is the definition? And this is your what is your definition for high team? How would you define that?
I probably wouldn't actually. I think that's really, yeah, because it's culturally sensitive, if I'm honest. So what is a high performing team? I went in the NHS.
Yes.
I basically went to the executive and I said, you tell me where you see high performance, and not one of them pointed to the same team. They pointed to all different, and there was sometimes several teams came forward as, so I went to see all of them, because you know what, we all see difference as what is the highest performing team. Now you could say, is it throughput? Is it profitability? You know, is it activity, capability, capacity? I think it depends in your organisation how you want to see it, Jo. So I would say, you know, there is some obvious things that we stick together, but for you and your organisation, I would say go and ask your employees, not necessarily the senior execs actually. I'd ask the people who are doing the work and say, give me our top 2 or 3 teams and go and listen to their stories. And you will find it's similar, but it's different. Humility, integrity, storytelling is there. Learning on the job, learning by the job, through people. You know, if they interesting, one of them was when they were not in governance. So where things failed, they improved it, and then they put that governance model throughout the organisation to constantly move up and bump up excellence. So I won't be stumbled and fall into that, but it's a bit of a trap.
God, that's such a politician's answer. Have you looked at Professor Reeves' work on action learning as a follow-up to the Belbin training to evaluate how the team addresses a complex problem? That's from David Chapman. Have we come across this?
We've looked at action learning a lot.
I did my master's in action. We tend to, oh sorry, and so Jen, you can follow this on. So first of all, my master's in action learning. We tend to run action learning, but not action learning, action in work, action in your where you are with your career, and you're developing yourself, and you question each other and push each other. But Jen?
Yeah, I work with Professor Lisa Anderson on this. We did a CID project together, and we looked at wicked problems. So you'll know this, wicked problems, how to look at complexity and put the Grint work and how to pull that aside effectively and work effectively together. And those were with HR directors, HR senior leaders, and trying to get them to work effectively with an action learning setting is hard. We know it's hard because they have to be able to talk about their problem and then be silent about other people's and not intervene, obviously, with leading questions. So we've certainly done a lot of work in that space, but interface between action learning and Belbin, I think, is a very interesting one to explore further. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's going to be on the list of things to discuss tomorrow. Denise, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute delight, and I know this is going to continue once I press the stop button, and we're going to be talking all afternoon. Yeah. Thank you to everybody for all of your questions, all of your feedback. We will be sending you a recording, so you can put the volume up. Apologies for those of you who've had a few problems, and just look what you can do. Just look what you can do to help our younger generations, our young people, to be able to make the difference that they need to make to the world. This is phenomenal. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody out there from the USA to the Czech Republic, Thailand, and everywhere in between. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I will now press the button. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Stop recording.